I want to share with all of you my take on my grandmother's marinara sauce. Now, I don't want that to sound disrespectful at all because my grandmother made amazing marinara sauce, but I have experimented with it over the years and I've kind of changed it up a little bit here and there. Sometimes I do traditional, what she did, but I do have some additions. And that's really the beauty of this sauce, is that you can add things and you can take things away depending upon what you enjoy and what your taste is like. So, excuse me, I have no cameraman today, so I'm just going to be taking you with me. First things first, I have a pot of oil, and oil just on the bottom, so it's just covering the bottom there in this pot. And my grandmother used to use vegetable oil or canola oil, but I prefer to use an olive oil. I think it gives it an extra level of taste. So I use olive oil, and again, I just kind of cover the bottom of the pot. I put my stovetop on medium-high heat just to get that a little bit hot. And then over here, I already have 6 cloves of garlic minced and 1 onion. Now, my grandmother always did garlic, but I don't remember her doing onion. I enjoy the onion. I think it gives it a little more of a bite. It sweetens it up a little bit, but not too sweet. I know some people put things like carrots or even just pure sugar into their marinara. I don't like a super sweet marinara, but the onion gives it just enough sweetness, I think, to make it, like I said, just another level of taste. So I'm just gonna take this on over to my pot, and I'm just going to scrape this in. Now, while I'm saying this, while I'm doing this, I just wanna say there is a huge difference to me between a fresh chopped clove of garlic and like a jar of chopped garlic or minced garlic that you can find and put in your refrigerator and keep forever. If you don't taste the difference typically, then go ahead and use a tablespoon or a teaspoon or whatever the equivalent would be. I think it's sometimes a little bit more, it's a little stronger when you have it in the jar. I don't ever use it. I don't know what it is about it. It's too bitter to me. So I always use fresh garlic. And if you're worried about chopping it, if you're worried about getting the like slices right, the pieces to be the right size, reach out to me. I'm happy to do another video just about knife skills and chopping skills. So here we go. This is just kind of sizzling. You can hear that, right? You want the onion to become translucent, and you want the garlic to just start to brown. So I know that sometimes people are like, what does that mean? So here you go. The onion is just starting to become almost like see-through. And the garlic, you don't want it to brown completely. You want it to just start to brown. So as soon as we're at that point, I'm actually gonna take this off of the heat for you so that you can see what that looks like, because the first few times that I made this, that was my mistake. I burnt the garlic. And burnt garlic, if you've ever tasted anything with burnt garlic, is no bueno. It ruins the whole sauce. So you really have to be careful. And notice how I'm just kind of like standing over the stove and I'm stirring the entire time. This is not something you can dump in and walk away from. Eventually, this sauce is something you can leave on the stove for hours to just simmer. But for the first 10 or 15 minutes, you are on top of it. Speaking of which, the tomatoes that you're going to use to put into this should already be opened. So I use canned tomatoes. Now, I have a can of Hunt's San Marzano tomatoes here that are just gonna be crushed. I'm gonna crush them up by hand. And then I have 2 cans of Hunt's tomato sauce. Again, my grandmother did not use Hunt's, but she used Red Pack for the crushed tomatoes, and she swore on Goya for the tomato sauce. But I'm gonna be honest with you, when I was little, I don't remember her using those two brands. So I think my grandmother used to use whatever was on sale, and then I think she used to just tell us this was the best, because it was whatever was on sale. But I will tell you, when you're looking for your crushed tomatoes, make sure that it says San Marzano style. That does make a difference. And that's not the brand. That's not like Hunt's or Red Pack. That is the style of tomato. So make sure you find a San Marzano tomato. I'm gonna take this off the heat for a second and take a look-see and see. I think we're getting there. So I'll show you what I'm seeing. The onions are completely translucent. You can see that the garlic is starting to brown, a little bit around the edges. I'm actually gonna leave that off the heat for a minute because the San Marzano tomatoes I was able to get today were not crushed. So I have actual whole tomatoes in here. And I mean, it's easy as just this. Okay, now that whole tomato is a crushed tomato. So if you can't find the crushed tomatoes, just bring it home and crush it. And I think it's funny, people who enjoy cooking, I think they're the same people who, when we were in nursery school and kindergarten, like ran for the clay table first, or ran for the sand table first, or the water table, like the places where you could get messy. I think the bakers were the ones who rolled in mud. I can't stand baking. It messes up my kitchen. It messes up everything so much. But cooking, I can get my hands a little messy. I kind of like, you know, mushing up the tomatoes, and when I'm making meatballs, I like sticking my hands in the meat. I know some people find it totally gross, but you know, those people, they're not cookers, and that's fine. Not everybody enjoys cooking. So I'm just gonna give my hands a rinse because now they are full of tomatoes. And I'm gonna come back and throw this on for another second or so. It's not 100% where I want it to be. I think the onions are, the garlic has like 30 seconds to go. And when I say 30 seconds, I mean it. Like, you can go from having a perfectly fine, perfectly cooked clove of garlic to having a burnt piece of something that's gonna ruin your sauce in 30 seconds. So really, really keep your eye on it. Okay, that truly is enough time. I'm gonna show you one more time what I've got in the pot. That's what we're looking at. Okay, everything just starting to brown. And within 10 more seconds, that would be burnt. So I'm gonna take my tomatoes that I just crushed and throw that in there and step back because that will spit. And give it a stir. Make sure that none of the onions or garlic are sticking to the bottom of the pot. And now I'll show you what we've got. Now it looks like that. Nice and thick and chunky. I'm keeping the heat on medium-high, and I'm putting in 2 cans. They are 15-ounce cans of tomato sauce. I'm just dumping those in. And then I'm filling one of the cans with water. And I'm kind of rotating the can as I fill it so that the sides are all cleaned. And over the pot, I'm dumping it back and forth from one can to the other to make sure that the cans are cleaned and we're not wasting anything. And then if there's anything in my crushed tomato can, I would put it in there too, but that's pretty clean. I'm dumping that water into the sauce. I'm giving it a stir. And I'm going to keep this on medium-high heat the entire time. And I'm going to add 2 pinches of salt to this. So when I say pinch, and again, I'm not a classically trained chef, so, you know, come at me if I'm wrong. I use these 2 fingers and my thumb, and to me, that is a pinch of salt. So I put 1, 2 pinches of salt. Extra goes over the left shoulder for luck. And I'm going to stir that up. I might add more salt later. I'm going to take a taste, and if it's bland, I will definitely add more salt. But I want you to remember, it's easier to add salt than to take salt out. You can't remove salt once you've put it in. And I think that's why people try to sweeten up their sauce. If they've added too much salt, I think that they add things like carrots or sugar to try to balance that out. But just don't add too much salt at the beginning. And, you know, if you'd like to add it at the end, you can. Now, this is going to come to a boil. And then I'm going to reduce the heat to the lowest point that my stove can go. And I'm going to cover it, and I'm going to simmer it for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I'm going to check on it every 10 to 15 minutes and give it a stir. When it gets to the thickness that you like, then your sauce is done. Remember, nothing in here is raw. I mean, they're vegetables, so it's not like you have to cook it to a certain temperature. So you're cooking it to your liking, right? When it's at the thickness that you're like, yeah, that looks like it's what I want, then that's when you can stop it. And then the other thing is, my mom used to fry meatballs, and as they were frying, she would add them to the sauce. So the sauce also kind of became a meat sauce because it took on the flavor of the meatballs, which you can do as well. So this is just starting to come to a boil. You can see there's some bubbles coming up. I want it to kind of not rapidly boil, but boil a little bit more than that. And then I'm gonna give it a stir. I'm gonna drop the heat to a simmer. I'm gonna cover it up, and every 10 to 15 minutes, I'm gonna come check on it and give it a stir. And when it's thick enough, when it looks like, you know, what I wanna pour over my pasta, then that's when I'm gonna stop it. And that's as easy as it is. I mean, it's a fresh sauce. I know we're using canned tomatoes, but it's not like a jar of ragu. And, you know, if you want a fresher sauce, I can make that too. One day I'll share that recipe with you. I do it every once in a while. But also the beauty of this sauce is you can add more flavors once it gets to the end of simmering. So if you'd like to chop up some basil, if you have fresh basil, do that. If you'd like to add some rosemary, do that. Oregano, you know, the flavors that you like to taste, go ahead and make this your own. Like I said, it was my grandmother's recipe. I've made it my own. I do add some fresh basil in the end. So do the same. And that goes for every recipe. Make it your own. Figure out what your family likes, the flavors that they like, and experiment. That's the joy of cooking, right? Experimentation. So I'm putting my lid on, dropping this to low, simmering it, and I'll show you the results in a photo. And I hope that you try this, and I hope that you love it. Have a great week.